And headphones off and out of your ears. We today did lesson 6, and that was about objects being launched versus being dropped. I know, big difference. What is the major difference between something being launched and dropped? The velocity. So we did look at a situation where there was no gravity, so that might be why we said that. But things being launched versus being dropped in the real world, there is still gravity acting on it. So the height of an object that's either being dropped or launched can be given by this equation. Negative 16t squared plus velocity times t plus your starting height. So although they usually don't make you make it from scratch, sometimes they might. That is why for some instances, it might look linear, like if there's no gravity involved and you just have this rest of the part. But if you have something being launched, you do have that represented as the B in your quadratic. So like this would be your A, whatever's in front of the T would be your B, and any constant would represent your starting height. So yeah, there's that. It doesn't matter what order they write it in, you pay attention to what that is in front of, and that'll tell you what it is in the situation. We also had to relate some vocab words to these projectile motion problems. And notice that for this equation that we gave you as kind of like a definition, the A is negative. So what type of U shape does it make? So where it opens downward. Great. Now what part of that U shape would tell me my maximum height? The vertex. So your vertex, which would be in the middle, tells you two things actually. It tells you the time that it reached the maximum height, and it tells you the maximum height. So make sure, like, it gives you two numbers. Make sure you're picking the right number for whatever question it's asking. At what time did it reach it, or what height did it reach it? That would give you your maximum. Now, it says this word, pay attention up here. It says this word zeros, which I've not yet introduced you to that word or really talked about it yet. But zeros is another word for x-intercepts. Why they call them zeros, I don't really know. But think about how at your x-axis, say 2 is the x-intercept, your y is always 0. So maybe that's why they're saying that. But zeros specifically are your x-intercepts. What would, and let's pretend this is on a coordinate plane, but looking at your computer screen, look at share. What would the x-intercepts tell me about the situation? Where it ended? Like, what do you mean? What would it, what would be the end in this situation? When it hits the ground. So if this is my diagram, I have two parts where it's hitting the ground. And now sometimes it might be like dropped off the building, so you might not have a certain part. But when you are graphing it, because you will need to graph it to get the answers for what the vertex is and what the zeros are, the x-axis would kind of signify your ground. Because can you have a negative height? No. Yeah. Can you have a negative time? So really, you're only looking at the positive values, and that goes into reasonable domain, right? Like if I was talking about something and maybe it looks more like this, where the U shape starts more in the negative x's and ends over here. my domain is still gonna start at 0 to wherever it landed at, whatever x value that is. So if it's 2 seconds, and we'll say 0 to 2. But can I have a decimal of a second? Yeah. Because it usually doesn't take that many seconds for something to hit the ground. So you probably will be looking at the decimals of it a lot. So you could say all real numbers from 0 to 2. If you say from 0 to 2, that automatically makes it just the positive ones, right? But it can be the decimals for the seconds. And I mean, you're just not really considering the negatives in this one. So questions on this? Okay, so then your practice that you need to make sure is done at 80% or higher is this one. I'm going to check right now for like the stuff that was done on Friday, because I feel like people are just using it as free time. This isn't your time to like make better friendships. Your time to make sure you understand math so that you will be set for the rest of your high school. No, like there's no more math labs after this grade.